Hello and welcome back to the Spotlight Games podcast. Today we're going to be talking about a big change for game developers. Assassin's Creed Mirage and Resident Evil games are coming to the newest iPhone. Borderlands developer Gearbox is maybe being sold to the highest bidder. And of course, our sweet dumpster boy has finally played Starfield, so we're going to be sharing even more impressions of one of the year's most talked about video games. I'm your host, Patrick. Joining me, as always, the aforementioned sweet dumpster boy, Cayman. Cayman, how are you?
Patrick, doing good, buddy. How are you?
Oh, I'm a little eepy,
Of
a
course you are, a
little,
little
a
sleepy
little
boy.
tuck me in because I'm a little eepy. But I'm excited to talk about video games. I'm excited to feel like I'm just an arm's length away from my sweet dumpster boy Cayman. You live much further than an arm's length away from me these
Sure.
days. So Tuesday nights always a dream for me because we get to chat, we get to fucking get into unknown territory together.
Mm-hmm.
We got a lot of video game stuff to talk about because this is the Spotlight Games podcast where each week we spotlight the latest and the greatest in the world of video games. You can get it by subscribing to our YouTube channel at Spotlight Games Pod or by searching for Spotlight Games in your favorite podcast app. And hey, you can be on the show by tuning in as we record live Tuesdays at 8 p.m. Eastern Time on twitch.tv/Spotlight Games Pod. So be sure to follow us there so that you're notified when we go live so you can be part of the conversation. In case you missed it, ICYMI. In case you missed it. Yeah, ICYMI. October 3rd came in. It's 3 weeks from today. We're going to be starting a 5-episode series of the top 100 games of all time. Why are we telling you now? Because in 3 weeks, this shit's closing down, and we need you to build the list. In the description of the podcast, the YouTube video, on our socials and our link trees, we've probably tweeted it. We've probably Instagrammed it. It's probably in our stories at some point. There is a Google form for you to fill out to help us build the list. You're going to give us your top 15 games of all time. A lot of math's going to happen. We're compiling it into the top 100 games of all time. It's already batshit insane with the amount of entries we've gotten, the games that are going to be on this list and not on this list. So if you got a game that you're really passionate about, that you really want to be in the top 100,
if you want to make
I'm gonna
sure,
also drop it in the chat here soon. If you're in the fucking chat right now, what's up, Cayman?
if you want to make sure that Bulletstorm is not in the top 10, you got to submit and push it out. So I can tell you right now, it's got points behind it.
It's got points behind it. There is a world, Cayman. I'm not gonna sit here 3 weeks ahead of time and spoil the list, Cayman. I'm not here to hashtag spoil the top 100. There's a big campaign on Twitter trying to hashtag spoil the top 100, and I'm not a part of it. Bulletstorm might be a little Cinderella story this time around, unless you, the listener and the viewer, friend of the pod, write in, tell us your top 15. Cayman, since I wrote this up today, since I put the doc together, we've already gotten 3 more responses.
Oh my
I'll just give
gosh.
you a little. How about this? How about a little? Let's just look at one response together right now. Just a
Yeah.
couple of them. Just a couple little quick hits. World of Warcraft. I think that might
Okay.
be the first World of Warcraft that's been in the list, potentially.
Oh,
Super Smash Melee.
okay.
Somebody somehow did they submit a graph? I thought this was text only, but I'm seeing visuals. That's what I'm saying. The top 100, anything can happen, folks. Anything can happen. But you know that World of Warcraft is, I guess, going to be on the list in some capacity. That's your one spoil. Hashtag spoil the top 100. Cayman, last week, you, me, and some fucking interloper, Lucas, chatted about Starfield for what felt like days. We spoke so much about Starfield. And since then, I'm just kidding, Lucas. I love you. You're not an interloper. You've been playing Starfield. Give us your thoughts, doggy dog.
Oh, Patrick.
I know that sigh. I know that sigh from a mile away.
So here's the thing. I want to preface this by saying, if anyone knows me, they know that I'm an advocate for mediocre video games.
Oh, for sure. You're the biggest mediocre fan I know.
Yeah, I am an advocate for mediocre video games because here's my reasoning, right? A bad game is a game that you do not have fun playing. That is a bad game.
Sure.
A game that is fun to play is worth playing. That is a good game.
Sure.
Now, here's the thing. Talking about Souls games, we talk about Elden Ring, right? Almost no fun playing that. Is that a bad game? Yes, it is. It's bad on the scale.
On the Cayman scale of the good and bad.
Okay, so there's a reasoning and logic here, right? Elden Ring is a masterpiece, and it's you can say that it's fine. It's a masterpiece.
Sure.
Totally understand that. But when it comes to me personally, if I'm not having fun playing a game and I'm beating my head against the wall and I'm like being aggravated by certain whatever reasons, then like it'll start dropping on the scale for me and then go down, right? But I can say that game's a 10 out of 10, but I can also say like, hey, this game's design or whatever is bad. But I can look at a game like Saints Row, right?
2022?
2022, the reboot. I had a shit ton of fun playing Saints Row. It's on PlayStation Plus right now. If you guys have a PlayStation, you can play it through PlayStation Plus. That game is bad. That is a bad game. That game score should probably be about a 5 or a 6. I had so much fun playing it.
So it's not a good game, even though you had fun playing it.
Exactly. Starfield is a mediocre ass game that I'm having fun, but I'm also incredibly annoyed by.
Sure.
So I'm going to start by saying right now, Starfield is a solid 7 to a 7.5 out of 10. Like I think
how many roughly hours you got? Roughly.
I'm roughly 30 hours into the game.
Okay.
Here's the thing. This is a Bethesda game, and I think that you nailed it on the head the other day when you said that your mileage may vary depending on the type of person you are going into a game like this. If you don't like Skyrim or Fallout, you're not going to like this game. You might find some enjoyment out of the shipbuilding and the outpost building, that portion. You might. But you have to cut through a lot of fat to get to those aspects. So even then,
Sure.
I struggle with this idea of like, for the people who are very much in tune with just that, I'm sorry, I don't think you're going to enjoy the game enough to get to a point where you actually can have fun doing that. Because, and this is one thing that really annoys me about the game, is that I really like the way that like Skyrim, like the system with Skyrim, and Fallout did it too, where it was like the more you do an action, the better you get at that action, and you level up. They've removed that system, and I feel like that really hampers any sort of feeling of progress in this game because you still have to do challenges to be able to unlock the ability to get like higher in those skills, but you're not actually making any progress towards that because you still have to allocate a skill point. And so I'm currently level 25 and I haven't even been able to do advanced lock picking yet. And I don't know if I ever will be.
I've been finding a lot of frustration with this too since last week, in that I feel like a happy medium would have been if the game was tracking these things in the background, and once you level up. So like as an example, I've started unlocking the research skill tree in terms of like weapon researching, spaceship researching, so that I can like craft shit,
Sure.
mod shit, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But I spend a skill point and then it's like, go craft 5 of this thing. And I'm like, well, I don't have a need to craft 5 of this thing right now. I've crafted things in the past already. I feel like I'm at a place now where I don't need to craft anything in this exact moment. But in order to level up, I have to craft things. So now I'm wasting materials to craft things just to do that. But if it had been tracking that and I use the skill and it's like, ding, you've already done this challenge. Good job. Now you can unlock level 2. I would fuck with that.
Yeah.
But the fact that it keeps stopping me in the game does this a lot. It works against you when you're trying to do something a lot. Whether that's in crashing the fucking game or not letting you move forward in a skill because in order to get more oxygen, I have to completely sprint 100 more times, which
Yeah.
I've done at this point what feels like 1,000 times. But
Mhm.
because I'm only now putting my skills into the oxygen skill tree, now I have to do those things again. I'm like, it just let me progress, dog.
Yeah. So
Yeah,
yeah,
I feel you.
so there's that. So I think that the terms of like the sense of progression in this game is definitely hindered. And I don't think it does a really good job on like helping you feel like you are making progress like an RPG normally functions, even with games like Skyrim or Fallout. So that's one of the big things that like immediately was like, I'm not huge on this. Where you can find workarounds is getting new spacecrafts or getting better gear that I feel like you can get that kind of stuff more organically in this game than
Mhm.
I feel like you could in previous Bethesda games. So that's nice because you can just go fucking if you go to a random planet and you see a spaceship drop, but if you haven't put enough points in there, you can only steal a certain level. So once again, that
Yeah.
you still are hindered. So that's an annoyance. The second thing, this game is not that good looking. It's not, and don't get me wrong, I'm running it on the Series S, so I'm not running it on the X, and I don't know if there's a real like any giant leap in fidelity from what I've
I think it's
heard.
just resolution
Okay, so from what I've
between
heard,
S and X specifically.
yeah, it's not a huge difference. It's not like you're playing God of War on the PlayStation 4 and God of War on the PlayStation 5. It's not the same,
Yeah.
right? So and the thing is, and I think that that's just kind of baked into the engine, and they built a new engine for this, but I think there's a lot of things that are still hung up there. So, like, for instance, one of the things I will say, Bethesda doesn't know how to make kids. They all are just miniature humans, and that to me is really funny and I love that about this because they haven't changed it all. But I think it's ambivalent of the other issues at hand that like when you go to like a hub world on a planet and
Mhm.
it feels lifeless. Like you can't really do much unless the character has a name on their head. And you'll do actions. You'll pull a gun out and fire it in a crowd and no one runs. And you're like, what the
Yeah.
fuck? Stuff like that is immersion breaking in a sense that like that's doesn't feel like if I drew a sword in Skyrim in a town or like I
A
pulled out a
guard will
flame,
come over and be like,
yeah,
"What
be
the
like,
fuck
what
are you
the
doing?"
exactly. So it's like little weird step backs that it feels like that they've made. And it could potentially be that they made purposeful step backs so that this game could run on console and still be able to have like something like the Series S be able to run it. And that could very well be the case. So it's things like that. So graphically, I don't think that it's really moving the needle forward in terms of like graphical fidelity, or I haven't had any big and that's another thing that like is kind of crazy to me. I'm 30 hours into this game and I still haven't had one of those big Bethesda moments.
Mm.
Like the opening of the game is very bland. It's very neutered. It doesn't feel like one of those traditional big moment set pieces that opens a Bethesda game. That was the first one. I still haven't had one since, including progressing through some of the main story missions, which is my second complaint. Or this is a lot of complaints. Which
Whatever
is
number you're on.
well, yeah, which is the story itself is not that intriguing to me. Like the
Sure.
main story arc isn't. And I know we're gonna get into this, so I'll kind of wrap up my spiel and we'll get into like the main story beat. That's like actually the worst thing that I think about this game. I'm like biggest complaint. Um, the thing is, like, the side quests are way more fun, and I think the side quests are actually probably some of the best side quests that there've been in Bethesda games. Like the Freestar Galactic Ranger side quest, I thought was really fucking good. The
Yeah,
UC
justified
Van,
the video game
yeah,
essentially.
the
Yeah.
UC Vanguard story arc that's going in multiple directions, really fun. Be like having to infiltrate space pirates, really fun. Main story, I have no interest in actually completing.
Yeah.
But these other ones are really cool, and that's why I come back to the point of a game can be bad. And I'm gonna throw this one other in there. The game crashes every hour to 2 hours for me. Doesn't matter what I do, just
Yeah.
always crashes, and that sucks. And the glitches and bugs I've gotten have been like game breaking bugs where I've had to like reload several checkpoints back because I can't like I've saved too far into a bug that I now can't reverse.
Damn. I see. I haven't had that happen to me yet. I've
So
just had the
that's happened.
crashes.
Yeah, it's happened on a couple quests. One of them was a main story quest
Oh
that
yeah,
like
you were
the
texting me about it. Yeah.
sensor wouldn't work. And because it wouldn't work, it wouldn't take me. It was bad. Either way, going back to the main thing is that the game is not a good video game in terms of like the way it functions. And I think that there's a lot of issues with it, but I'm having fun and I'm enjoying my time with those issues set aside. So, with that being said, a lot of the 7, 7.5 out of 10, a lot of that is just because I really like Bethesda games. And I
For
like
sure.
being back in a Bethesda world where I get to do fun side quests, fuck off, do whatever I want, and have that freedom of exploration. There's nothing else like this type of game anywhere else. Bethesda is the master of their craft. The problem with that is Bethesda is a master of their craft and they don't have to get better because no one else is trying to emulate what they're doing. And because of that, I feel like we are essentially getting this generation's version of another Bethesda game we've already gotten 4 times before this. It's just a little bit more polished. There's some new features. You can build a ship if you can figure out how to actually build a ship, which I don't think is humanly possible, and an outpost, which I also don't think is humanly possible to actually build anything unless you are like a IQ 180 IQ and know how to inverted controls because you can't change the controls there. So that being
Yeah.
said, I think this is not a great game. I think this game borderlines on mediocre to good. I think the person who goes out and gets an Xbox for this game is going to be the person who really loves Bethesda games. Like you are a diehard Skyrim, diehard Fallout person, then yes, go get a Series S. They're not that expensive. Well, I say not that expensive. They are not, you're not
Comparatively.
comparatively speaking, go get an Xbox. If you don't, and you just are like, maybe I'll like this game, don't waste your fucking money on it. Just don't. It's not worth
Sure.
it for you if you're just doing it to try. I would say like Game Pass has really good offerings. And so there might be some more worth there. But if your only intent is to get an Xbox to play Starfield, I don't think that this is the game that you are thinking that you want to play. It wasn't. It's just a very interesting setup and situation. But Patrick, I want you to take off from here because I just talked for a long time. I want to talk about
I
the big story
Yeah, so a
moment.
couple things. A couple things, and then I wanna jump into that. I've never been this conflicted about a video game in recent memory, where, like, since last week, I'm up to about 50 hours. So I about doubled my time from last
Mhm.
week, and I'll have so much fun doing it, and I'll be pulled in so many different directions, and I wanna do so many things, and then just so many things will go wrong in the game that just completely sucks the fun out of it that I'm just like, I'm so torn on what I think about this video game, which is interesting, and I feel the urge to keep playing. I will say, in terms of the main story thing that you mentioned, where you're just like not interested in it, I've recently gotten to a point in the main story where I am now very interested in the main story. It
Okay.
took me a while though, so I will say, keep on with the main story, and maybe it'll grab you like it's grabbed me. Um, but it's also I find it really strange that a studio like Bethesda, who has built so many of their games on exploration and stumbling into these kind of new situations, built a game so devoid of life.
Oh yeah.
And what I mean by that is you go on any given planet, and because it's procedurally generated, like it'll pop up random different like places that you can go to, and like buildings and things like that, but it's all very far apart from each other, and it doesn't feel like it's been kind of handcrafted like so much of their previous games have felt, because it's not. It's only the main planets where, like your big cities are, that they built, and then any planets that are tied to the main story. But so often I feel like when I'm on these planets, I I'm like, I'm checking boxes in terms of, well, I need to find what the traits are for this. I need to find all the resources. I want to scan as many plants and animals as I can to get XP. But I'm not. It's missing that magic that previous Bethesda games have had. I'm just walking around and you see like a huge settlement off in the distance, and you go there, and like in Fallout, and then you go down the whole Nuketown quest. It was like,
Yeah.
because there are only so many cities in this game, and they're all on very specific planets. But a lot of this game is spent going to random planets out in space that have nothing on them, and it's just like this
Mhm.
weird like.
So I think I've cracked the nut on why it feels the way it feels. It's because it's an open world game in theory only. Now, you can hit a planet and you can walk through a planet, and for the most part, there are invisible walls. It's not as egregious as I think some people initially had said, but the problem is though it is an open world game, the open world sections are almost like tied off, kind of like how Final Fantasy 16 is, where
Yeah, I see
it's
what you
open
mean.
world, but you have to go to different chunks of the map to actually be able to explore. And because the other previous games were, you could walk from one end to the map to the other in one straight line
Right.
if you could jump over a mountain, which if you played Skyrim enough, you know how to jump over mountains. You can't do that here. So you have to get in a spaceship and then you have to leave and you have to go to another planet. So any of those interactions that would have taken place before where you would have stumbled across something new, you're not driven to do that because if you were to go to be like, I'm going to fly from one galaxy to the next, one, that's impossible. And two, if you want to fly from the Earth to Pluto, it takes 9 real-time hours to do that if you wanted to fly that.
And
And
that's
there's
just not
no guarantee.
fun.
There's no guarantee you're going to see anything in those 9 hours. So I think that's the problem is this is an open world game segmented off in different chunks where you're not, it's not going to be, it doesn't feel as organic to stumble into huge things like you would in previous Bethesda games.
Yeah.
That magic, that's gone here. And I feel that in my bones.
Yeah,
And
I
that's
agree.
been one of those things where it's like, and you don't know where certain events like there's like I know like I ran into a random encounter and it was like, "Oh, here's a random quest." But I looked online and it was like, "Yeah, you can find this." It's RNG on when it pops up and it could be at any single galaxy in the entire universe that you're in. You don't know, you can't plan it. So it's like
Yeah.
that's going to be I feel like that's going to be really annoying when you have like when you're late in the game and you've cleared a bunch of quest lines and now you're just waiting on RNG to pop something for you to do. That
Yeah.
seems like a bad game design there.
Yeah, I also, and then yeah, so this next bit, and then we're gonna wrap up our Starfield talk to go into the next section of the show. A little spoilery, and not huge like. Well, I mean, I guess it is kind of a big story beat. If you don't want to know anything about Starfield, you want to find everything in terms of like story related stuff.
So
Skip
it's
ahead like a minute.
this is probably I think the third story mission. So if you mainline the story, this is probably 5 hours in. If you're me, you did this at hour like 28.
Yeah.
So
And so yeah, so skip ahead a couple minutes. I always put the time codes in the description if you want to just skip to the next section of the show. So last call, gonna spoil like a feature essentially of the game. If you don't want to hear that in 3, 2, 1. So there's this moment where you
Mhm.
find out that you get powers, essentially magic. And I was so excited when this happened. Lucas, who was on our show last week, very sweet man. We were talking and he was like, "Hey, before we do the review or our first impressions, you should make sure you get to the end of this mission and you'll understand why." So I did that and I got to the end of that mission. I was like, "Oh, I'm really glad you told me that because I think I would have done what you were doing came in because the story wasn't grabbing me. 30, 40 hours in, I'm going to still have not done that mission because I'm
Yeah.
being pulled into other places." But then you find out you this thing that you found, it gives you powers, and now there's going to be a whole bunch of other quests to go find new powers in the universe. And I was texting you, came in about this. It's like at first I was so excited. I was like, oh wow, this is something. It wasn't spoiled for me. I wasn't expecting this. What a cool kind of Skyrim-y feeling thing. I've now played the game another 35 hours since I got the powers, maybe 40 hours since I got the powers. I've maybe used the powers like 4 times, and I've unlocked like 16 powers at this point. Like I have so many powers, and I'm just not using them. And I feel like I will say where I just got in the story, I do kind of feel the need to use some of them. So like maybe I'm a touch too soon on this kind of judgment that I have, but it just feels really strange that I'm this far into the game and I've only unlocked 2 powers that even feel worth using.
Mm.
Do you just have the one so far, or how many powers do you have?
Yeah, so I only have the one so far, and I used it once, and that was because I had to show it off. I
Remind me
forgot,
what's the
honestly.
very first one you get?
It's when you can do low gravity on enemies, I think. I don't know.
Yep,
I haven't
right, right,
used
right,
it
right, right.
in a fight because fights are few and far between, apparently.
Sure.
So yeah, but the power, I'm like, I honestly forgot entirely about powers until we sat down to record to talk about this.
Yeah,
That's
it's
and
so
it's
bizarre.
Yeah, and I will say, like in Skyrim, they did a similar thing in Skyrim where you got, I mean, you're the Dragonborn, you use absorb souls of dragons. It's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I use those powers quite a bit because you had like certain unique ones that were really interesting. And I used them quite a bit, like playing through Skyrim. That was like, I loved using those. Here, I forgot. And two, I'm not far enough into the main quest line to speak too much on this to be able to be like, yes, it makes sense. But the game tries to be so grounded in reality of like this is the future
Mhm.
of Earth, or this is the not Earth. You can't even go to Earth. Well, you probably will at some point, but for the most part, it's like, hey, this is the future. This is a very grounded look at what the future of humanity is. And then they throw these alien powers at you, and it's like, yeah, man,
It's a little
kind of was just
dissonant.
enjoying having space can't like laser weapons and using shotguns in space and flying ships is cool
Yeah.
enough. Like I don't know like if I feel like the powers right now, at least for me in the story, really mean much. That's why I don't care about the main story where I told Sid earlier, I was like, there's a good chance I burn out on this game before I even get halfway through the story.
It's possible.
Because it like I want to go do, but then I'm part of me is like, no, I need to do the main quest line because I'm going to burn through all the good stuff and then I'm going to go back to this shit. And if it doesn't get any better,
Yeah.
I'm going to be more disappointed in this game. Yeah.
Yeah, and then there's the whole and let's wrap up after this, but then there's the whole like Pete Hines before the game came out, he's high up at Bethesda is like the game really starts at like New Game Plus, which like, we can debate on whether or not like that's bullshit. But then I hear people that I trust their opinions and I often align with their opinions be like, weirdly, he's actually right. Like I'm having the most fun on New Game Plus, and now things are clicking, and I'm like, but there's going to be so many of us that never even make it to New Game Plus.
Yeah.
But anyway, so we'll keep reporting back. I hope next week I'm singing a bit of a. I'm a little more down on it this week than I was last week. Still very positive. No, still positive, but there's just things that are weird. But then going back to what you say, I'm having fun still,
Yeah.
and I've doubled my time. So like it's just this weird. I don't know. It's strange. Also, haven't said hi. We got Cognitive Clips in the chat. Hey, Cognitive Clips. We also got Sweet Ski just submitted my list. Thank you. Terry in the chat. Been playing Saints Row, and I 100% agree with Cayman. Fun, yes. Good game, no. Correct. And then to kind of end this topic and move on to the next part of the show, Kreslin 1090 in the chat, which I don't know that we've had you in the chat before. Thanks for being here. Kreslin 1090, have y'all played Baldur's Gate 3? If so, how does it compare to Starfield? Sorry if you've already talked about this. We have not talked about this because neither of us have played Baldur's Gate 3 yet, even though we're both itching to. But
Yes.
I will say, last week we had Lucas on the show, helped us with our initial impressions. He has since moved on to Baldur's Gate 3, and he was texting us about it. And he's, this is all hearsay essentially, but he had a lot of really good positive things to say about Baldur's Gate 3, specifically in comparison to Starfield, and saying that it's doing a lot of what he wished Starfield would have done. And he's a little concerned going back to Starfield now that he started Baldur's Gate 3 because of how good Baldur's Gate 3 is. So because of what Lucas said, I am not touching Baldur's Gate 3 until I finish Starfield because I want to maximize my enjoyment of them both. But we will
100%.
definitely by the end of the year have our Baldur's Gate 3 impressions because I'm very excited to play that game. We just haven't gotten to it yet.